What is Pac-Man fever and who's likely to get it? Now, just about anyone. Pac-Man has come out of the video arcade closet and is moving into your living room. For many people, there's only one way to unwind after a tough day of playing Pac-Man when the wrist is sore and the thumb is blistered, and that's to read a good book. But many people say the book tells you nothing. One of them, a math, physics, biology major from RPI, Keith Raniere.
You've seen financial scam corporations and you've seen nefarious cults, but has anyone ever succeeded in putting them together? Founded in 1998 and based in Albany, New York, Nexium was a self-proclaimed personal development MLM or multi-level marketing company. Wealthy members would offset their entry costs by recruiting new members. In other words, a pyramid scheme. Nexium attracted a variety of notable individuals, including actors and children of powerful oligarchs. But Nexium was not always affluent or well-known. In fact, it began under a different name: Executive Success Programs. The name sounds straight out of a corporate starter pack. Executive Success Programs were courses designed to, quote, actualize human potential in business, relationships, and interpersonal connections. The program was marketed as a series of workshops that ensured you could be successful in all areas of life. A proverbial fix-all that appealed to people looking for a sense of community, accomplishment, or extrinsic motivation. Nexium has two founders, President Nancy Salzman, nicknamed Prefect, and Keith Raniere, leader, co-founder, and mastermind behind the grand manipulation that would transpire, also known as Vanguard. You would think that these are Call of Duty clan names, but in fact, they are actually characteristics of a cult. As a young adult, Raniere was intrigued by Isaac Asimov's science fiction novel, Second Foundation, which he said inspired his efforts at Nexium. Second Foundation, published in 1953, portrays themes of telepathy, mind control, behavior modification, and manipulation. One example from the book is the Mentalics, futuristic robots that use special abilities to read and shape the minds of others to further a specific agenda. To best understand Raniere, there are two stories from his childhood in particular that encapsulate his philosophy. First, his father James Raniere, when talking about his son's upbringing, is quoted as saying, "What we did is we told Keith about how gifted and how intelligent he was, and he said it was almost like a switch went off. And suddenly overnight he turned into like Jesus Christ, and that he was superior and better than everybody, like he was a deity. He said that it was that dramatic and that profound." According to his father, his simple words of encouragement led Raniere to think he was a god. This level of narcissism combined with his sociopathic behavior were the driving forces behind Nexium's success. Raniere's god complex would be imprinted in his brain, becoming an obsession. No one was going to tell Keith Raniere what to do. The second story, told by Barbara Boucher, one of Raniere's former partners, recalled a time Keith told her about his youth. Quote, "Dozens of young girls were calling the house and Raniere's mother was overhearing his conversations with them, where he was telling every single girl the same thing. I love you. You're the special one. You're important. You are the only one in my life and I love you." And she says he's saying this to all these girls. He's clearly lying because all of them are not special. But you know what is special? Browsing the internet with the help of today's video sponsor, ExpressVPN. If you guys are anything like me, spending a large majority of your day inside connected to the internet, then you're giving your internet service providers and advertisers more opportunities to collect your data and legally sell it. ExpressVPN is a simple app on your computer or smartphone that encrypts all of your network data and tunnels it through a safe and secure VPN server. A lot of people think they're safe whenever they open up an incognito tab or a private browser. However, your internet service provider can still see the hentai sites that you like watching. I use ExpressVPN on all of my devices because it adds that extra layer of protection from anyone trying to snoop around. My favorite part about ExpressVPN is that by connecting to one of their servers, I'm able to access other countries' streaming services such as Netflix or BBC iPlayer. For example, whenever I connect to the UK, I'm able to watch Rick and Morty on their Netflix. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like going to the bathroom with the door open. You can do it, but it's a risk I don't want to take. Go to expressvpn.com/Philion or just click the link down below to find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN totally free. And thank you to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. This very well could have been his first step towards mass manipulation, and Keith Raniere would never grow out of this deranged phase of his life. According to the Albany Times-Union, at the age of 24, Raniere allegedly seduced and sexually assaulted Gina Melita, a 15-year-old girl he met in a theater group. Melita couldn't tolerate the abuse for long, and she ultimately ended their relationship, but Raniere was introduced to her friend Gina Hutchinson, another 15-year-old whom he would also abuse. Heidi Hutchinson, the sister of Gina, confronted Raniere once after he had entered through her sister's window. He responded with, quote, "Gina is a Buddhist goddess, meant to be with me." Right. Part of his perversion was that he was able to create an environment and power dynamic in which his manipulation was presented as the truth, and everyone else's modus operandi was wrong. Raniere would often sleep with other women, which made Gina understandably distraught. As if this illegal relationship wasn't enough, it was only made worse by Raniere, saying that his actions of polyamory empowered women. Gina would endure an on and off relationship for over 10 years with Raniere. At Consumers Byline Incorporated, Raniere's first MLM founded in 1990, Gina decided not to reveal negative characteristics about him during an agency report so that his goals of, quote, money, power, and achievement were not disrupted. Meanwhile, she had been drained both mentally and physically due to Raniere's constant deceit and abuse. Tragically, at the age of 33, she was found dead in her car near Woodstock, New York. She was allegedly instantly killed by a self-inflicted shotgun wound to the head. Gina's was corroborated by police and autopsy reports, but theories online speculate that she may have been killed by Raniere. Heidi Hutchinson, to this day, believes Raniere caused Gina severe emotional stress, resulting in her death. In the same year his MLM was founded, Raniere met Tony Natalie, a top seller of CBI who would soon divorce her husband and start a relationship with him. The structure of CBI led to 25 different states investigating the company, but ultimately New York would pursue them legally, filing a lawsuit alleging the company was a pyramid scheme. And in 1996, the Attorney General of New York permanently shut down Consumers Byline Incorporated. According to the Times-Union, Raniere was forced to pay a $40,000 fine and sign a consent order preventing him from, quote, promoting, offering, or granting participation in a chain distribution scheme. However, Keith Raniere's habits would not change. He went on to create other businesses that failed, all while smooth-talking or abusing women into sleeping with him. Christine Milanikos, winner of the title Miss Michigan, met Raniere in 1998 after going through a divorce. According to James Adato and Jennifer Gish's article titled In Raniere's Shadow, Milanikos recalled Raniere once explaining, quote, how there was a profound event that would often happen to the women who became intimate with him. Sometimes they would even see a blue light. Ultimately, I agreed to be intimate with Keith, and it was just as he said. I even saw a blue light, but I don't think I told him so. I remember thinking, wow, my brain is really susceptible to the power of suggestion. Besides being a womanizer, Raniere found time to create a new company called Executive Success Programs with partner Nancy Salzman. A New York Times article describes Nancy as a nurse and practitioner of hypnosis who preached a pseudoscience known as NLP or neuro-linguistic programming. It is often touted by the likes of Tony Robbins or other self-proclaimed moguls who believe they have the secrets necessary to tap into other people's minds. The company launched with the aim of offering self-improvement techniques, but was rebranded a couple years later to NXIVM or Nexium. The Hollywood Reporter asserts Raniere adopted his nickname Vanguard based on his favorite arcade game in which destroying others grants you more power. This anecdote alone provides insight into Raniere's self-awareness. He knew Nexium was not for others. It was for him. A bullshit company that existed solely for him to play out his perversions. With prior experience from his other multi-level marketing companies, Nexium had been steadily progressing until 2002, when Raniere and Salzman successfully recruited Sarah and Claire Bronfman. The Bronfman family was a wealthy Canadian family known for acquiring Seagrams and building a billion-dollar beverage empire. The girls became devoted followers of Raniere and even backed him financially. However, Raniere simply saw them as legitimizers. If he could recruit them, then he could recruit anyone. Over time, Sarah and Claire would become Raniere's confidants and part of his inner circle. For the heiresses of the Seagram fortune, it must have been easy to take a course at Nexium, but for the average person, it was incredibly expensive. Nexium Recruitment included programs and courses that would range from $2,000 to $7,500. Additionally, Nexium upsold courses called intensives, which were conducted for 12 hours a day for 16 days straight. Former Nexium member Frank Parlato told CNBC News that, quote, "You'd take a $5,000 course, and as soon as you were done with that, you'd be told, now you're really ready to take the next one." The courses themselves were broken down into modules, with each module teaching a different topic. One example is the module named Dracula and His Ghouls, which supposedly taught members about psychopaths and their followers. Quite ironic if you ask me. During each course, members would recite the 12-point Nexium mission statement, pledging to purge themselves of, quote, all parasite and envy-based habits, to enroll others, and to ethically control as much of the money, wealth, and resources of the world as possible within my success plan. This ethos fooled many members, as the exact opposite was playing out without their knowledge. For one particular member, Nexium may have taken their purge to a new level. In 2002, Kristen Snyder had seen an advertisement about Nexium, aimed at helping individuals unlock their potential. For over a year, Snyder eagerly participated in Nexium classes until she attended a 16-day intensive course in Anchorage, Alaska. Her spouse, Heidi Clifford, told the Times-Union, Snyder had become, quote, sleep-deprived, delusional, and during her stay at the intensive, Snyder was last seen leaving her hotel in distress. To this day, no one is certain what actually occurred, but Anchorage police speculate Snyder traveled to Resurrection Bay, where she committed by deliberately capsizing in a kayak. Her disappearance or death is still a mystery, but an apparent note found by police gives us insight into her final thoughts. I attended a course called Executive Success Programs, also known as Nexium, based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and Albany, New York. I was brainwashed, and my emotional center of the brain was killed or turned off. I still have feeling in my external skin, but my internal organs are rotting. Please contact my parents if you find me or this note. I am sorry, life. I didn't know I was already dead. May we persist into the future. On the second page, she wrote, no need to search for my body. Wherever Raniere would go, death followed. By 2003, Nexium had approximately 4,000 people take part in their courses, though it wouldn't be until 2006 when Raniere would find his most dedicated recruit. Kristen Crook, best known for her role in the series Smallville, joined Nexium. Almost immediately after, co-founder Nancy Salzman and her daughter Lauren traveled to recruit more members with perceived fame or leverage. They found Crook's Smallville co-star Allison Mack. Allison joined Nexium, but unlike Crook, who would go on to leave the cult, Allison grew to enjoy it. The Hollywood Reporter stated she became, quote, an enthusiastic proselytizer. Allison Mack would even co-create The Source, a program inside Nexium, which specifically targeted actors for recruitment. Her status as an actress allowed her to quickly rise the ranks, sliding her way into Raniere's inner circle. At this point, Raniere's trusted few included Nancy and Lauren Salzman, Sarah and Claire Bronfman, and Allison Mack. Raniere fabricated a sense of, quote, corporate feminism. As a result, these women all became staunch defenders of Raniere. The Bronfman sisters would even use their wealth and power to ask district attorneys to start criminal investigations into anyone critical of Nexium. To further validate the company and quell public backlash, Raniere decided to create the Knife of Aristotle, a Nexium-affiliated news company. According to multiple journalists, including Iker Sposio, Mary Von Au, and Brock Wilbur, fake staff members hired journalists to gain media approval, and the Knife of Aristotle was considered a cult-like fake news factory. However, Raniere's fake news wasn't enough, so he and his faithful followers sought to distance themselves from possible cult allegations. One way he accomplished this was by co-founding the World Ethical Foundation's Consortium, a non-profit organization which sponsored a meeting with the Dalai Lama in 2009. The Dalai Lama visited the Nexium headquarters in Albany, where he spoke on stage about morality and inner values. The entire endeavor was said to have cost around $2 million, which goes to show Raniere and his followers would do anything at this point to paint Nexium in a positive light. During the Dalai Lama's visit, Raniere's confidant Sarah Bronfman had a sexual relationship with Lama Tenzin Doden, the monk who had set up the Dalai Lama's appearance. This is one isolated example of how Nexium's ideology could be capable of overpowering others. Before leaving, the Dalai Lama gifted Raniere and his company leaders scarves representing purity. These scarves were symbolic of Nexium's sash system. Frank Parlato, a former member turned investigative journalist and critic of Nexium, compiled an account of the sash color system that Raniere used to codify his most loyal followers. White sashes were given to students. Basically, anyone who had paid to partake in a Nexium program got a white sash. Yellow sashes were given to individuals who worked for free at Nexium but also paid dues. Orange sashes were given to proctors, who also earned a small salary or commission for recruiting. Green sashes were given to senior proctors. These sashes generally cost a member around $1 million in overall investments. Blue sashes were for counselors and could cost around $5 million. These members made a salary, but nothing compared to the money that they put in. Purple sashes were reserved for senior counselors, and according to Parlato, this level was extremely hard to reach, and over the course of the company, only 3 people ever did. Gold was the last sash, and it was dedicated towards the perfect co-founder, Nancy Salzman. And Raniere? He wore a white sash because he thought of himself as a student, always there to learn.
You all have to judge your guru.
For the music guru. I'm not a guru.
This was just a tactic he used to seem humble before his peers. Clearly, this sash system was just a scam to funnel more money out of his consumers' pockets. Members were conditioned to place extreme value on $7 pieces of fabric. Following the momentous event in Albany, Raniere thought he had done well, and that Nexium would be seen in the media as an authentic self-improvement company. In reality, Raniere was delusional. Within the same year, 9 employees of Nexium left the company and told the Times-Union of, quote, concerns about unethical practices and the alleged abuse of his leadership status to sexually manipulate women in the organization. A string of serious allegations would follow. Tony Natalie and Barbara Boucher, Raniere's former partners, came out against him, alleging serious abuse, with Natalie telling Vanity Fair, quote, Raniere had insisted that Tony Natalie keep the body of her dead puppy in her garage freezer, and to look at it daily. The only explanation for Raniere's orders is sadism. The victims of Raniere's abuse began to grow bolder, as more and more women came forward, and Nexium's veneer began to fade. In 2012, the Times-Union published an expose detailing 3 separate accounts in which Raniere abused underage girls. In 2014, 5 years after the Dalai Lama's visit, Kristen Keefe, another longtime partner of Raniere, decided to break from his group and left with Galen, Raniere's first child. According to James Adato, she fled with her son, leaving an email stating, quote, "I have full, sole, legal custody of Galen. Keith was experimenting on him. I had to get Galen away." The most shocking revelations to come from Times Union's expose included Raniere grooming 3 daughters of a Nexium family and creating a secret group within the company called Dominus Obsequious Sororium, or D.O.S for short. This translates to Master over the Slave Women, or Lord of the Obedient Female Companions. The 3 daughters he groomed eventually became his sexual partners. Mariana, who was the oldest, was sexually abused, becoming the mother of Raniere's second child. Daniela, the middle child, was groomed as a minor and began a sexual relationship with Raniere right after her 18th birthday. The youngest daughter, named Camilla, was sexually abused by Raniere from roughly 2005 to 2017. She was only 15 years old when it began. Years later, Daniela would go on to testify in court that she had been forced into solitary confinement in her own home by Raniere. Her family was prevented from speaking with her, and Raniere's confidant Lauren Salzman was in charge of making Daniela, quote, learn from her mistakes. For 2 years, she was unable to leave a dark room with only a mattress, pen, and paper. Raniere's sexual abuse of these 3 sisters was proven using prolific evidence such as Daniela's testimony, hospital records, as well as sexually explicit images of the girls in his home. However, sexual predation, assault, and was not enough for Raniere. A sick sociopath like himself needed more power. Thus, he secretly built a sex cult within Nexium to perpetuate his darkest motives. By design, Raniere was the only male member of D.O.S, going by the alias Grand Master. It is estimated that over 150 women joined D.O.S, the first members being Allison Mack, Lauren Salzman, and Nikki Klein, a Canadian actress best known for her performance in sci-fi television series Battlestar Galactica. Lauren Salzman, one of Raniere's most trusted members, explained the meaning behind D.O.S as a way to worship Raniere and foster an environment of, quote, total obedience and secrecy. Raniere was able to convince women to join his cult because he told them that it was for women only and that they would feel empowered. The structure was almost exactly the same as his other MLM businesses. Women in D.O.S would recruit slaves, who would then be expected to recruit slaves of their own in order to eventually become masters. Each slave owed service to not only their master, but the master of their master, and so on, with Raniere being at the top of the pyramid. Raniere was able to maintain control over D.O.S by collecting Collateral, which was highly damaging pictures, videos, or financial information pertaining to each member. This Collateral would be released if any of the women tried to leave the cult. The women of D.O.S had to also adhere to Raniere's preferences. For example, he liked women exceptionally thin, so he implemented an extremely restrictive diet and documented their food intake. Some of the women in D.O.S were even branded with a cauterizing pen. The women would go to Allison Mack's home and be filmed as Collateral, fully naked and branded with Raniere's initials. Raniere hid the fact that it was his initials from a majority of the women because he knew how demented it was, and only those fully committed to him could be trusted with his true vision. Audio recordings of Raniere were played at his trial, which stated, quote, the person should probably ask to be branded. They should probably say that before they're held down, so it doesn't seem like they're being coerced. Raniere believed that D.O.S would grow to spread across the entire United States. He pictured his cult growing to encompass thousands of members, filled with women who had power and influence but were blackmailed to still be his slaves. It's not hard to believe that any of Raniere's relationships were consensual. The responses for his actions are horrific, and some of you may not want to hear this. There are a few women who I've spoken to and counseled that say they never had an orgasm in their life until they were. And of course, Raniere would carry this sick ideology over to the courses at Nexium. For instance, sub-courses titled Sex and Orgasm and Abuse, Rights, and Injury taught that women achieve ultimate pleasure from being and that sexual abuse of a child was not a crime. In Raniere's twisted mind, D.O.S would thrive for the next 2 years until 2017, and the New York Times published articles on Raniere's slavery, branding, and abuse. In the wake of these articles, Raniere fled to Mexico with members of his inner circle. He tried to hide, but was soon apprehended in Puerto Vallarta by Mexican federal police after the FBI issued a warrant for his arrest. In Raniere's indictment, he was charged with sex trafficking, conspiracy for sex trafficking, and conspiracy to commit forced labor. On June 19, 2019, after his federal trial, Keith Raniere was found guilty of sexual exploitation of a child and possession of child porn, sex trafficking and attempted sex trafficking, forced labor, identity theft, conspiracy to alter records for use in an official proceeding, racketeering conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy. He was given a 120-year prison sentence, along with being forced to pay a total of $3.4 million to 21 victims and $1.7 million to the US government. Raniere was given the heaviest sentence, but that didn't mean others weren't culpable. Raniere's closest confidants had been complicit in his nightmarish fantasy. Allison Mack pleaded guilty to racketeering and racketeering conspiracy, receiving a light sentence of 3 years in prison. Nancy Salzman and her daughter Lauren both pled guilty. Lauren received 5 years of probation, while her mother was sentenced to 3.5 years or 42 months in prison. Claire Bronfman pleaded guilty to conspiring to conceal and harbor an illegal immigrant for financial gain, as well as fraudulent use of identification. She was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison. Her sister Sarah was not charged with any criminal wrongdoing. According to Esquire, quote, "She is even entitled to make money off of Nexium property she owns." Following the fall of Nexium in 2020, HBO released The Vow, which followed the experience of individuals involved with Nexium. It detailed the stories of members who escaped the cult, including Sarah Edmondson, Mark Vicente, Bonnie Peace, Anthony Ames, and Catherine Oxenberg. The docu-series includes footage shot by Vicente as part of Nexium's plan to constantly document Raniere for future generations, and to showcase how wise he was. Starz also premiered a true crime docu-series into this corporate cult called Seduced, Inside the Nexium Cult. This series follows India Oxenberg, or the daughter of Catherine, a former member of Nexium who had a hard time coming to the realization that the self-help organization she trusted was truly a cult. Additionally, other women from Nexium, such as Naomi Gibson, Tabby Chapman, and Kelly Teal, share their stories of the abuse they suffered or witnessed. It's hard to believe that stories like this can actually happen. Like the cult leaders before him, Keith Raniere used manipulation, coercion, blackmail, and abuse to control his victims. He brainwashed women into believing what they were doing was part of something greater, separate from himself. Through the stratification of his cult, he was able to shift blame and responsibility on those who worshipped him, and normalizing the behavior for others. It's impossible to point to one single event that leads to cult formation like Nexium, when in reality, it's years and years of interpersonal conditioning. Remnants of Raniere's empire exist on YouTube. Conversations with Keith Raniere showcase a man who seems to have it all figured out, when in reality, it's a shell of a human only thinking about his next victim.
This is like the Rubik's Cube to a certain extent. A lot of people play it just competitively, but it's actually like a puzzle.